Social responsibility is an ethical theory that an entity, be it an organization or individual, has an obligation to act to benefit society at large. Social responsibility is a duty every individual has to perform so as to maintain a balance between the economy and the ecosystems. A trade-off may exist between economic development, in the material sense, and the welfare of the society and environment. Social responsibility means sustaining the equilibrium between the two. It pertains not only to business organizations but also to everyone whose any action impacts the environment. This responsibility can be passive, by avoiding engaging in socially harmful acts, or active, by performing activities that directly advance social goals. Businesses can use ethical decision-making to secure their businesses by making decisions that allow for government agencies to minimize their involvement with the corporation. For instance, if a company follows the United States Environmental Protection Agency guidelines for emissions on dangerous pollutants and even goes an extra step to get involved in the community and address those concerns that the public might have, they would be less likely to have the EPA investigate them for environmental concerns. A OEA significant element of current thinking about privacy, however, stresses self-regulation rather than market or government mechanisms for protecting personal information. According to some experts, most rules and regulations are formed due to public outcry, which threatens profit maximization and therefore the well-being of the shareholder, and that if there is not outcry there often will be limited regulation. Critics argue that corporate social responsibility distracts from the fundamental economic role of businesses. Others argue that it is nothing more than superficial window dressing. Others argue that it is an attempt to preempt the role of governments as a watchdog over powerful corporations, though there is no systematic evidence to support these criticisms. A significant number of studies have shown no negative influence on shareholder results from CSR but rather a slightly negative correlation with improved shareholder returns. Student social responsibility. Student social responsibility is the responsibility of every student for his/her actions. It is morally binding on everyone to act in such a way that the people immediately around them are not adversely affected. It is a commitment everyone has towards the society contributing towards social, cultural and ecological causes. SSR is based on an individual unregistered trademark ethics. Instead of giving importance only to those areas where one has material interests, the individual supports issues for philanthropic reasons. It forms the base for CSR or corporate social responsibility because if everyone in a business organization does his/her bit, the bigger things automatically fall into place. The trends, however, show that big charitable organizations recorded high growth due to the SR efforts of individuals and not corporates or the government. ISR may be slightly impractical, especially in the modern competitive world, where everyone works for self-interest, but it will succeed if we take decisions based on what will benefit a large number of people and respect every unregistered trademark's fundamental rights. As individuals we can make our small contributions to society by donating money to trustworthy unregistered trademarks, saving our resources by reducing our consumption, for example by switching off lights or computers when not in use. Corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility or CSR has been defined by Lord Home and Richard Watts in the World Business Council for Sustainable Development unregistered trademark's publication Making Good Business and see unregistered trademark as OEA the continuing commitment by business to behave ethically and contribute to economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families as well as the local community and society at large. CSR is one of the newest management strategies where companies try to create a positive impact on society while doing business. There is no clear-cut definition of what CSR comprises. Every company has different CSR objectives, though the main motive is the same. All companies have a two-point agenda to improve qualitatively and quantitatively. The second is as important as the first, and stakeholders of every company are increasingly taking an interest in without a circle the activities of the company and how these are impacting the environment and society. Social responsibility of scientists and engineers. One common view is that scientists and engineers are morally responsible for the negative consequences which result from the various applications of their knowledge and inventions. After all, if scientists and engineers take personal pride in the many positive achievements of science and technology, why should they be allowed to escape responsibility for the negative consequences related to the use or abuse of scientific knowledge and technological innovations? Furthermore, scientists and engineers have a collective responsibility for the choice and conduct of their work. Committees of scientists and engineers are often involved in the planning of governmental and corporate research programs, including those devoted to the development of military technologies and weaponry. Many professional societies and national organizations, such as the National Academy of Science and the National Academy of Engineering in the United States, have ethical guidelines. Clearly, there is recognition that scientists and engineers, both individually and collectively, have a special and much greater responsibility than average citizens with respect to the generation and use of scientific knowledge. Unfortunately, it has been pointed out that the situation is not that simple, and scientists and engineers should not be blamed for all the evils created by new scientific knowledge and technological innovations. First, there is the common problem of fragmentation and diffusion of responsibility. Because of the intellectual and physical division of labor, the resulting fragmentation of knowledge, the high degree of specialization, and the complex and hierarchical decision-making process within corporations and government research laboratories, it is exceedingly difficult for individual scientists and engineers to control the applications of their innovations. This fragmentation of both work and decision-making results in fragmented moral accountability, often to the point where every body involved was responsible but none could be held responsible. Another problem is ignorance. The scientists and engineers cannot predict how their newly generated knowledge and technological innovations may be abused or misused for destructive purposes in the near or distant future. While the excuse of ignorance is somewhat acceptable for those scientists involved in very basic and fundamental research where potential applications cannot be even envisioned, the excuse of ignorance is much weaker for scientists and engineers involved in applied scientific research and technological innovation, since the work objectives are well known. For example, most corporations conduct research on specific products or services that promise to yield the greatest possible profit for shareholders. Similarly, most of the research funded by governments is mission-oriented, such as protecting the environment, developing new drugs, or designing more lethal weapons. In all cases where the application of scientific knowledge and technological innovation is well known a priori, it is impossible for a scientist or engineer to escape responsibility for research and technological innovation that is morally dubious. As John Ford writes in Unregistered Trademark Moral Responsibility and the Ignorant Scientist Unregistered Trademark Unregistered Trademark OE ignorance is not an excuse precisely because scientists can be blamed for being ignorant Another point of view is that responsibility falls on those who provide the funding for the research and technological developments, which in most cases are corporations and government agencies. Furthermore, because taxpayers provide indirectly the funds for government-sponsored research, they and the politicians that represent them, that is, society at large, should be held accountable for the uses and abuses of science. Compared to earlier times when scientists could often conduct their own research independently, today our unregistered trademark experimental research requires expensive laboratories and instrumentation, making scientists dependent on those who pay for their studies. Emerging normative status of social responsibility. Social responsibility as a non-binding, or soft law principle has received some normative status in relation to private and public corporations in the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights developed by the UNESCO International Bioethics Committee, particularly in relation to child and maternal welfare. Faunce and Nassau 2009. The International Organization for Standardization will encourage voluntary commitment to social responsibility and will lead to common guidance on concepts, definitions and methods of evaluation. The standard describes itself as a guide for dialogue and language, not a constraining or certifiable management standard. See also, Scuppy, Corporate Social Responsibility, Social Enterprise, Social Entrepreneurship, Socially Responsible Investing, Inclusive Business, SA 8000, Shareholder Primacy, Notes. References, Haynes, T. Social Responsibility and Organizational Ethics. Retrieved May 8, 2010, from Answers.com, http www.answers.com. Social Responsibility and Organizational Ethics, Kalinda, B. Social Responsibility and Organizational Ethics Encyclopedia of Business and Finance. New York, Macmillan Reference. Pride, William M., Hughes, Robert James, and Kickapoo, Jack R. Business, Boston, Massachusetts, Huffton McFarlane Company. ISBN 0-618-77091-7. Further reading